screaming. Ooh. Excellent connection. Nothing coming over the excellent connection, but an excellent connection nevertheless. I told you to bet every penny you had on the Broncos yesterday. Good morning, you lucky devils. Welcome to a Monday morning quarterback edition of Sunrise Sermonette. Yesterday's premium episode will be remade. I thought it was ready to go. I had another PowerPoint open and built half of yesterday's episode on that PowerPoint, and now I forgot which one it was. I have to go back and find it. Plus, there's a whole other topic. There were several things as I was live streaming the episode. Rough draft. I thought, oh hell, there's a whole section that I thought was going to be in here. And this includes Reykjavik, Iceland. Remember last year when we were more or less talking about the phony kidnapping of the Lindbergh baby and Reykjavik, Iceland after World War II? I made a big deal about that. Remember? Well, one of these people, and I don't remember which one it is, it's not Jim and Darlene. It's either David, Betty Lou, Brian, or Cecilia. Their dad was stationed there at that in 1950, 51, that exact same time period. I don't remember which one it is. I have to go through all. I thought yesterday's episode was ready to go, and all I had to do was paste in some Betty Lou stuff, and it wasn't even close. So, so that didn't count as a premium episode. Not that I'm keeping count, and not that you're keeping count. However, no, that does not pass. So I just left it public, so maybe it'll track. I'm picking up new subscribers already. So if you have already been a long-time subscriber to the premium website, your subscription to the premium website has been extended. Today's the last day of September, so I will make sure nobody should get charged for October unless a couple of people just signed up in September, but I think they canceled already. If you just signed up in September, you have to pay your October bill, and then you won't have to pay another bill. But other than that, I suggest that if you haven't done that, then to start watching premium episodes, you'll have to be the members only. And no ads on, like this video would be ad-free. Yesterday's video was ad-free when I live streamed it. Was this worth getting out of bed for? I had a point. What was my point? Was it about a comment? I don't think it was about a comment. I don't read the comments. Yes, I do. Somebody came. There's a documentary about another. There's another documentary about another 60s hippie commune. Jennifer Mushnick, I live in San Francisco. There's an Olompali State Park located 32 miles north in Marin County. That's exactly right. That's where this, I think it had been owned by a rich family that lost their money or something, and a son inherited it, and he's one of these baby boomers who has the psychedelic experience, and he decides to pursue this as alternative, and he marries this woman. He and his wife are both swinging hippies, so they get divorced. It's a crazy when you start reading between the lines and you have seen all the episodes of the Stones Unturned podcast, you understand what's going on. These hippie communes were, to a great extent, they thought they were spontaneous. The extent to which experiments are being performed on them by people usually living within the group. And at this Olompali commune, let me just, I think it was on Doc Club, Olompali State Historic Park, Olompali Hippie Commune. Because you people do know, I've pointed this out, right? You do know that Diddy is everything Charles Manson was supposed to be. Charles Manson wasn't even the only Charles Manson. This project had been cooking for, it's called a protocol. I'll explain that soon. A protocol is like a broad research program. And you can apply for, usually, I learned about it in the context of applying for grants. They have protocols out there. If you're doing any kind of genetic research, germ warfare wants to know about it. So if your research, to qualify for almost any federal grant, you have to follow certain protocols. And that can include collecting certain types of data, doing certain types of experiments, collecting certain types of data, reporting that data in a certain way to a certain official at the Centers for Disease Control. Whatever it is you're studying. If you want this federal research money okay, those are called protocols, not specific programs. So MK Ultra was a protocol. Lots and lots and lots of individual experiments were done within the broader guidelines of the protocol. Protocol is also what you could standard operating procedure, but protocol is used kind of specifically. There's a specific process for doing what we're doing here. What's this got to do with Reykjavik, Iceland? Nothing. So MK Ultra is a protocol. Chaos is a protocol. Protocols can be sent out to Foreign Service officers and other people responsible for carrying out State Department policy. These are protocols. Whenever an American tourist is kidnapped, you don't pay the ransom. That's protocol. Whenever an American tourist is arrested for dropping a $50,000 tip on a rub and tug, you don't go run into the feds and claim election interference. That's protocol. It's protocol to drop the tip. It is not protocol to call that election interference. I think you get the idea. Olompali fits the protocol of, I know I knew the name of this at one time, but Barack Obama's mother, Cora Dubois, Julia Child, they were all involved in this protocol that was going on in East Asia, South Pacific, studying primitive cultures, sometimes in Africa, studying primitive cultures to see how rites of passage, all this stuff that became of interest to us was all funded by the company, even before they were called the OSS. And they perform these experiments now on American adolescents. It's technically against the law to experiment on children in school without their parents' permission. And when we talk about, I'm going to give Walter Bosley a scoop about me, but about what was something that was going on at Stanford at the time Arliss Perry was murdered. I'm going to give him a scoop about that, just for fun. And then I'll tell you guys all about it later. So if you wanted to do these, what you could do is go to a college campus. Next best thing, they're 18 and over. They are adults. So a lot of these laws against experimenting on children without their parents' consent, now you're out of there. And so they're really focused on rites of passage. They're really focused on fraternity hazings. They're really focused on homecoming dances. They're really focused on, and how they can influence this. These are research protocols. Then the next step is, or a deeper step is, how do you start a new tribe? the Mel Lyman community, the Mel Lyman family, Fort Hill community in Boston, where Arthur Michael Pascal was the Boston Police Department expert, learning about cults by studying that cult. The East Coast Charles Manson. Well, that was partially successful. They're still around today. They're kind of like the Amish with a capitalist bent. They're wealthy and profitable little cultish communal family. They were asked about it. They said, what's the difference between us and the Manson family? Well, the Manson family were about peace, love, and murder. We're not about peace and love. They would kind of joke about it. But that was only, and by partially successful, that's one model, and this is how it resulted. The Manson family was another one, under this umbrella protocol. Greenfield Ranch, although many of the people who moved there, or Morning Star Ranch, many of the people, terrible, Blaine called it. Blaine was the first one not the Berkeley Barb. Who did he work for? Blaine said it was nothing but a lair of pedophiles. And they were. Maybe not now, but a lot of the people who moved there, a lot of the people who joined Jim Jones, sincere. They're not all spooks. And it's not that Jim Jones is necessarily spooky, but he's supported by by the company, whether he realizes it fully or not. Like Hitler, like JFK. Well, Obama's mother is one of these anthropologists. So the Olompali hippie commune, one of the kids who grew up there, they were called the Chosen Family because they chose each other to be a family. But they were called the Chosen Family. This is a guy who hiked to the ruins of the Chosen Family hippie commune at Olompali. Hiked to the ruins of the Chosen Family hippie commune at the Bay Area's Olompali State Historic Park. You can go there. There was a fire. But one of the cool things to see there, was the original ruins of the original Adobe Rancho that had been built there. Was pretty cool. It's a really nice place. It's a really cool place. Can you see any of this? Oh, how about this? Does that work? Right, there's a documentary. My point is this. There was a family who already rented that house or something. And it was a single mother. Very middle class. I need to go back and watch it again. But their name was Jensen. And they stayed pure, straight, but they intermingled with the family. They had a very long discussion. The leader's like, I can't kick them out. They stayed there, but they interacted, and the kids all grew up as like siblings and everything, but they stayed pretty square overall. And not only did the Grateful Dead crash there and rehearse there, but there was this, before the Grateful Dead, okay. You can watch the clips on YouTube now. Groucho Marx was a huge fan and friend of Alice Cooper. He said Alice Cooper is pure vaudeville. And not just the G-rated afternoon matinees that you see reruns on TV. He said this was vaudeville. In the English department or in the cultural studies department, the Greenwald, how the fuck is that? I never could pronounce it. The main character, French puppet show. The Grand Grignon. How do you fucking pronounce this? Okay, how do you pronounce? Alice Cooper's stage show, that's all it was. It was an old tradition, Groucho Marx said. Late at night, the kiddies are in bed. The band plays extra wild and extra loud, and it's a play about John the Baptist, and a guy actually cuts his head off, right? He said this is old vaudeville. My point is, the subculture, counterculture, hippie entertainers that we think of starting in the 60s. Actually, that goes back thousands of years. Watch Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. It's Hamlet told from their point of view, written by a great playwright, and really pulls out the stops with the wordplay. And it's really cool. It's a really cool movie. And there's a lot more about the company of players who come to Elsinore in the middle of a war, right, to perform this. And this shows a lot more. And it shows probably a very realistic recreation of what that type of traveling little circus would have been like. They could do magic tricks. There was a little miniature circus. They knew all the plays by heart. They can improvise. It's a really, really cool movie about it. And so there is this old Belstbort. She's aging. Belstbort Chanteuse. I don't remember her name. She shacks up with the family. So there is a singer, in addition to, if she had sung with the Grateful Dead, they might have had a #1 hit. But she's this bohemian. Bohemians have been around forever. That kind of thing. So the CIA are deliberately studying bohemian culture, how bohemian subcultures evolve. Spy networks always emerge within some subculture, some counterculture subculture. So they're studying this intently. This is what's going on at Olompali. And the neutral observers are this Square G family, the Leave It to Beaver single mom, shacking up with these people. There's a tragic ending. The Hells Angels, it's a script, okay? There's a script. What was supposed to happen, what was planned to happen at Spawn Ranch was Gethsemane. They would raid the ranch, they would drag Charlie away, they would crucify him. Well, at the last minute, they changed the priority. A new protocol trumped the original protocol and said, we have a much more important operation. We need to test out, we need a exercise with live ammunition with our SWAT team we just created. So we're going to use them for that. So they didn't drag Charlie away. They wanted them to flee out to the desert. What they do at Olompali, same thing. It's just a slight variation on the exact same theme, or as it is known in the business, same protocol, different run, different model, different lab, different experiment. Now, I couldn't find any connection between that Jensen. I need to dig deeper. Because what surprised me, I didn't know this until they showed it. They told me they'd interviewed one of the girls on the beach at Lake Berryessa who had been stalked by the guy. I don't think he was the killer, because why would the killer show those girls his face all day and then put on a mask? I think it was the park ranger, Dennis Land, that they saw. But if it was the killer, why didn't he attack the 3 girls? That's a 3-for-1, right? But the way she told the story was that the blonde girl with them, there was a blonde, a brunette, and a redhead. The blonde girl just kept her face down. She was lying face down. The redhead and whatever, I think she was the redhead, the brunette, they kept watching the guy, and he finally went away. When they got up to leave or move, the blonde girl stood up, and the creeper could see the blonde girl's face, and he disappeared. They didn't see him again. So they left, and on their way up to the highway, they noticed Brian's car, but the killer's car was not parked behind Brian's car. That's not my point today. My point is, it seemed as though he was stalking Cecilia Ann Shepard specifically. I totally forgot to mention that. Well, I'm going to cover the actual crime in a separate episode, and you need to read this book. I'm not going to redo this book, at least not for several years, as video. So you need to read this book, The Myth of the Zodiac Killer. My point is that girl's name was Jensen. But she's not related to Betty Lou Jensen. She's not. I couldn't find any close relation. It's a very common name from Norway, whatever, Sweden, whatever. But I think she might be related to the Jensen who was living at Olompali. One big clan of Jensens. Probably came over on the same boat. And I thought that was very interesting. That it seemed like the attacker at Lake Berryessa was looking specifically for Cecilia. Because, as you read in this book, I'll mention very briefly, Park Ranger Dennis Land is on post. He has a radio in his truck. The other park ranger just has the walkie-talkie and he's in the other truck. It's a very slow day. There's not even any traffic on the highway. Brian and Cecilia drive over the Pope Creek Bridge on their way down to the beaches, and Park Ranger Dennis Land leaves and follows them. This is according to the radio dispatcher's log. He doesn't say he's following a car. He doesn't mention ever seeing that car across the Pope Creek Bridge while he was on patrol there, and Ranger White was still there when the dispatch went out about the attack. But he goes down to the beach, and he sees a blonde girl, but it's not Cecilia. Well, he hangs around until he can see her face, and it's not Cecilia, and he disappears. Watch the documentary. Watch The Myth of the Zodiac Killer. That's so Reykjavik, Iceland, and not only, I'll talk more about the crime at Lake Berryessa later, but the fact that witness who came forward, she said she's been terrified her whole life. And I don't blame her. I wonder if she's related to the Jensens who lived at Olompali. The family who didn't take off their clothes, and they didn't lock themselves in their room. They just didn't change their culture. But they were still part of the family. And it didn't last long. And there was an apocalyptic fire. There was an apocalypse. They had their apocalypse. This all played out. Same protocol, same general research, but a very specific iteration. That's the word I'm looking for, iteration. Are you with me? And then when these all fizzle out and wind down, you get this wave. There have been one or two over the years. Now you get this wave of these Hindu yoga cults coming into America. These Hindu yoga cult leaders and their adult consciousness, infant consciousness. That we are born with old souls and we need to be reminded as quickly as possible. And this justifies all kinds of, not just abusing children the way you're thinking, but the permissiveness, like at Olompali, they let the small children, I don't think did they let them drink LSD and marijuana. And then there's a record company executive, the manager for the Grateful Dead. Isn't he? They don't mention it in the documentary, but Courtney Love's father, he takes over the colony for a while. And he's addicted to PCP. Whoever he was, he's some record company executive, some A&R guy working with the Grateful Dead. And he's addicted to PCP. And then the leader comes back and everything. They are reenacting not just the story, that specific one that's in the Bible, or all four versions that are in the Bible, but this classic story of the crucified God. The man who becomes a god. He is rejected by his people, and then crucified, and then he achieves his apotheosis. This is what was supposed to happen to Charlie. But then they changed the schedule a little bit for some reason, somehow. It's like, because the raid at Spawn Ranch happened after Helter Skelter, right? Things don't always go exactly according to plan. But watch that documentary. It's interesting. It's very interesting. The more of these you watch, the more you see the pattern. You see the protocol. And you see the different iterations. By iteration, I mean Zodiac, Manson, Son of Sam, JFK, Trump. Will no one rid me of this troublesome real estate developer? I'm Professor Thomas Henry Horan, asking you to please stay plugged in to the Stones Unturned podcast.
He reads everything.
Thanks, guys. I'll see you in a day or two with the next actual, genuine premium episode. Take care.